Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Golden Astrologer Podcast. I'm Deb McBride, and it is Easter Sunday, 2021, April 4th. So, I hope whoever is celebrating Easter is having a lovely time. Here in Costa Rica, it has been a beautiful day. We had lots of Easter celebrations. Yesterday we had a dinner, and today the children got to do their chocolate bunny hunt, chocolate Easter egg hunt, all over the garden, and some kids came, and it was a very pleasant afternoon. So it was a very lovely Easter weekend here in Costa Rica, and I hope yours was as lovely as well if you were celebrating. And one of the things that is important right now and is very interesting right now is we've been watching the planets sort of march together through the zodiac since early in the year. They have, and it's still early in the year, frankly, but since early in the year, they've been clustered together. They were together a bit in Capricorn, but really clustered quite a bit in Aquarius. And then so much so in Aquarius that it was really intense. Like there were like 5 planets in Aquarius at one point, and it was sometimes 6 with the moon. And then they marched on into Pisces. And now they've marched on into Aries. And yesterday, Mercury went into Aries, as you may have remembered from my last week's podcast. So Mercury, being the planet of communication, has now marched into Aries to join Venus and the Sun and Chiron, the asteroid. I'm going to call him an asteroid, Chiron. And so this is very interesting because we are watching these groups stay close together. Now, the Venus-Mercury connection to the Sun is always very close. So they are always either in the same sign as the Sun or before the sign before, the sign after, because they always travel close to the Sun. However, it seems that every time the Sun changes signs, these guys come in too, Mercury and Venus, and there's always another heavenly body in the sign with them. So in Aquarius, we had Jupiter and Saturn. In Pisces, we had Neptune. Back in Capricorn, we had Pluto. And now we have Chiron. And then Taurus, there's Uranus. Okay? And then once we get to the North Node, then it's Gemini. And there's been something in every sign to go along with the whole Venus, Mercury, Jupiter arrangement. Venus, Mercury, Sun arrangement. Jupiter is staying in Aquarius. Anyway, so this little arrangement, it was intense when Jupiter and Saturn were part of the arrangement when everything was in Aquarius. And then the Sun moved out and went to Pisces, and we got some relief. The Sun heats things up. Okay? The Sun always heats things up. And it is good. It is the life force, but it does heat things up. And whenever the Sun highlights something, as we have been experiencing all year, we watch the Sun, sort of heat up whatever planet is already there. So it was with Neptune, and now it's been with Chiron. And I think that a lot of us had to address our wounds, as I talked about last week, especially during the full moon. And we had to address our wounds, and, I'm not exempt. I had to address my wounds too. And the Sun and Venus have remained close together, which I think is very interesting. They are very close together, and they continue to be close together. And interesting, what we have in astrology is as a term for that. Whenever a planet is very close to the Sun, and it's usually between, maybe I think 8 degrees as far out as it goes, but Venus and the Sun are 2 degrees apart. This is what is known as combust, okay? Combust means that the planet that is next to the Sun is in the heat of the Sun, okay? So I said the Sun heats things up. And Venus is being heated up by the Sun for all week. It's been heated up by the Sun, and it continues to be hot with the Sun. So this is in the sign of Aries. And Aries is a hot sign anyway because it's fiery. It's the first sign. It's the fire sign that starts the zodiac, and it is ruled by Mars. And what makes this so interesting is that it's fiery sign. The Sun is exalted It likes being in Aries. And this week, later this week, we will see that the sun will reach 19 degrees of Aries. Right now it's 15, so in like 4 days or so, like usually around April 9th, the sun reaches its point of exaltation. And 19 degrees of Aries is where it is exalted. So it's a powerful day. So this week, Friday's a powerful day, but we'll get into that for other reasons. So what happens when a planet is combust? It means that the energy surrounding the planet is in the heat, and it turns up the volume on that planet's energy, and it sort of gets swallowed up by the heat of the sun and by the fire. And imagine living in the heat of the sun. You'd be burned to a crisp, right? So imagine a planet close to the sun in this way is what we call combust, because it's under that combustion, under that heat. And so things are a little exaggerated when we have the heat of the sun on a planet such as Venus. So Venus does not love being in Aries. She likes being in the opposite sign of Libra. But since she's in Aries, she's a bit of a spitfire right now, especially in the heat of the sun. And one of the things that I think is vital and important and came to me today on a number of occasions in the last couple days is that when, we pay attention to the sun, okay, of course, people know their sun sign. I always say everybody knows their sun sign. But you are dealing right now in this last week with a whole lot of Venus and the sun together in Aries. Aries is about the self. Aries is about self-knowledge. Aries is about stepping forward and initiating and being in the process of selfhood, and the part of us that gets to know ourself, and the sun being there, the life force of self, of feeling, connected to one's self. What does that mean? That means that we're not looking at everybody outside. We got to focus our intentions and our energy in our own direction and our own actions. And sometimes that means that we need to be very, very aware and self-aware to how we act, behave, take care of ourselves. And Venus is the planet of love, and Venus is the planet of beauty, and Venus is the planet of aesthetic, and it's also money. But when I think of it in Aries, I think of it as that like kind of spitfire, flirtatious, maybe very beautiful, but on some level a little flawed, because Venus does like to be in the opposite sign of Libra. But I always go back to, and I've said this before on this podcast, two of the most major Hollywood sex symbols of the 20th century were born with Venus in Aries, and that is Elizabeth Taylor and Marilyn Monroe. Neither of them had smooth love lives, as we know. And Elizabeth Taylor's love life was splashed across tabloids for decades. So, and it's interesting, Vanity Fair wrote an article. They had an article in Vanity Fair that is still on their website about when she met Richard Burton, and how she she had lost her husband, Mike Todd. He had died in a plane crash, and then she was friends with Eddie Fisher and Debbie Reynolds, and she basically insinuated herself into their marriage, and Eddie Fisher left Debbie Reynolds for Elizabeth Taylor. And then she, in turn, left Eddie Fisher for Richard Burton when she met him. and so, these wild, crazy Hollywood, life-wrecking romances and heated marriages and affairs, that's Venus in Aries. And I remember in the Vanity Fair article, it said, when this was going on, they were calling all sorts of scandals. First of all, they said she stole Eddie Fisher from Debbie Reynolds, and she, you know, got involved with Richard Burton and blah blah blah, and they said this is when she became Elizabeth Taylor for Once and for All, like the Elizabeth Taylor that we grew up with. And she was highly philanthropic and a very kind person, and she was a Pisces. But the love life stuff was interesting and heated, and what she called le scandale when she was seeing Richard Burton. But undoubtedly she was very passionate, and she was obviously very beautiful, but she was, that was that Venus and Aries, man. Like, it's fascinating. And off the top of my head, I don't remember what her aspects were, but it's fascinating to watch it in action like that. So, so she's a really good example of having Venus and Aries. Now, with the Sun and Venus so close together, and she did not have them combust because she was a Pisces, so it was a different sign. When the Sun and Venus are so close together, I think that they are indicating to us that we need to pay attention to how we love and honor ourselves. And it is in the sign of Aries, the sign of self. And so expression of self, self-aesthetic, but really also the beauty of self, and finding your beauty in yourself is very important right now. And looking at yourself in the mirror and knowing you love yourself. And self-love, I mean, it sounds corny, it sounds goofy to like look in the mirror and say, I love you, I love myself. But it is vital to our lives that we love ourselves. Because if we don't love ourselves, well, then first of all, these are the people that are going to come to me and cry that they don't have a love life. Well, do you love yourself? And, these are things that we all need to address. How much do you love yourself? And putting yourself in a way like asking yourself for things and taking good care of yourself, making sure you get enough rest, making sure you get enough self-nurturing, self-care, making sure that you are not eating and working at the same time. All of these little nuances are important for self-love. It's hard sometimes to not eat and work at the same time. It's hard to, I remember growing up and eating and watching TV. and this was, something we did. But, one of my friends here said to me recently, eating is sacred. Oh, no, finish your meal. Eating is sacred. Get back to me when you're done. Eating is sacred. So this is one of the little nuances in our life that we need to pay attention to. What we're feeding ourselves and how we're feeding ourselves on all levels. So if the news is hurting you, don't watch it, or limit the time that you are viewing it. If you are being fed information from the internet that does not necessarily agree with you and it upsets you, do not digest that. Go away from it. Do not allow it in. And if there are people in your life who are complicated or make your life complicated or not kind in some way, then you must connect with that part of yourself that has attracted this kind of person into your life. Understand it and try to limit your exposure if you can, or don't have the person in your life. If people are not kind to you, it is a reflection of self, okay? And it's always important to reflect on self and how, what you may or may not be giving yourself in your life. And I don't mean a fancy car. I don't mean, fancy jewelry. If that works for you, great. And it's important to nurture oneself and give oneself the place to express and care for the self. And so if it means that you have to shut off your phone for like an hour a day just to get some peace and process, then do that. And stay off technology, then do that. If it means you need to take a hot bath every night, do that. Whatever it means buying your favorite piece of fruit a few times a week, do that. I'm saying fruit because it's healthy, as opposed to, I would say food, but that could mean that you're buying like junk food. Oh, I want these chips that are really, really got lots of chemicals on them. The thing that's important is that we nurture ourselves and take care of ourselves, especially when we have a Sun Venus going on. Now, one of the things that's going to happen a week from today is we are going to have an Aries new moon. So this is powerful because the moon is going to be at 22 and a half or so Aries. And it's going to occur in the evening of the 11th, if you're on the Eastern time zone. And it's going to be something that is important for a variety of reasons. And why do I say this? Because, it's 10:30 actually, so it's a little later than evening. It's like around the time we're going to bed, but in the Eastern time zone. But what's important is that it is still close to Venus. So on Sunday of next week, we are still going to have the sun and the moon. Now, so then the moon is good. New moons mean sun and moon together. And the new moon is going to be close to Venus. And what it's going to do, it's going to visit the sign of Aries starting on Friday. It's going to move into Aries. And it's one of the things that's important. It's going to be very late. It's going to be in probably the wee hours of Saturday morning, that the moon moves into Aries. And then it's going to, what's very important is that now we're having an additional heavenly body in the sign of Aries. Once again, the cluster continues. So we went from a cluster in Aquarius, a cluster in Pisces. Now we're having a cluster in Aries. So at that point, we're going to have the sun and the moon, Mercury and Venus, that's 4 planets, plus Chiron, the asteroid, in Aries. This is a lot of fire, a lot. And the moon in Aries is a little impatient. So we need to be patient with ourselves. Now, before the moon passes over and connects with the sun, it is going to conjunct Chiron on the evening, Saturday the 10th. And it may trigger some of the wounds we talked about last week. Just be aware of that when the moon goes to Chiron. And then when we get to Sunday and the sun and the moon are together and having the new moon, that's a hell of a lot of energy. That's a lot of energy. So if you feel very agitated or feeling in a way that you are like really experiencing too much energy Sunday night, try to get yourself to calm down, because if it's Sunday night for you and you're not in a part of the world where it's daytime, it may be a lot when you're trying to go to sleep that night. So the sun and the moon are going to still be very close to Venus, and several hours after the new moon, the moon will conjunct Venus. And what's interesting about that is that it's, it's going to go void of course right after that on Monday. And it's going to be like very early Monday morning on the Eastern time zone, like 8 a.m. or so. And, as you start your day, next Monday, you'll have the sun and Venus and the moon very close together. And we're going to have that anyway. Venus is still close to the sun and all on Sunday. But this is not just, so this is incredible, right? So now we've got the sun and the moon. Now last week we had, again, it's a similar thing. We had, the sun is staying very close to Venus, and the sun and Venus were close, and they made their conjunction last week. And then we had, the moon in opposition to that, but they were kind of close to Chiron. Now, what we're having is, then that's not now, but, a week from now on the 11th, we're having the Sun and Venus together with Pluto. Because Pluto's in Capricorn, and the Sun and the Venus and the Moon are all going to square that Pluto. And Venus will be directly squaring Pluto on the 11th. So when we're having the new moon, right around the same time, Venus and Pluto are going to be squaring. Well, this is complicated because now not only do we have all these planets in Aries, but now they're going to all start squaring Pluto because it's in Capricorn. Now, what's a square? As I've talked about before, it is a challenging aspect. It asks us to navigate energy between Aries, the self, and Capricorn, which is the greater world at large. It is the reputation. It is one's reputation, one's place in society. And it's when we start to feel, like it's our career and those kinds of things. But it's also authority figures. So there may be some clashes in the news, authority figures and stuff. Don't worry about it. Keep going. One of the things that's so important is that we are working to get our self to a point where we are feeling loved by self. And then we're going to have this experience where it's Sun, Moon, Venus, and that's all good for loving oneself. And then it's going to square Pluto, which is highly transformational. So it's going to light up Pluto, which is the planet of darkness. It's the underworld. It's the unseen. And so we are looking at ourselves, looking at the authority figures in our lives, and because Pluto's in Capricorn, and it's important to pay attention to all of it, to pay attention to ourself versus the authority figure, and where all of that, how that all sort of jives. What's interesting is that Pluto is also very passionate, and Venus to Pluto is very passionate. And Venus is extremely hot. And that now, as we know, and then she's going to square Pluto. So if you're feeling feisty or just sexy, sexy's better than feisty. We want to try to keep the anger levels down to a minimum because Pluto can get hot under the collar. And Aries is definitely hot under the collar. So what you want to do with this energy is be extremely creative if you can. Yet think outside the box, be creative. Pluto is very creative when it's with Venus and Pluto. But they're also very sexy. And they're also very, they can be very determined. Pluto in Capricorn is very determined. And anything in Aries is very determined. So I would say this is a hot aspect next Sunday. And so do be aware of that. Do be aware of your temper. Do be aware of, now, Venus's relationships, right? Pluto is sexual relationships. Pluto is powerful relationships. Pluto and Venus squared could be power struggles, could be something intense in your passionate relationships, could be something really unveiling, because Pluto is very much about, going into the darkness and embracing it and shining a light in there. And so the sun is very bright in Aries. And so the sun and Venus sort of coming a little bit at odds with Pluto and the moon, the illumination, the possibilities for illumination about one's own relationships, about one's own relationship to self-love, and the darker qualities that are on the other side of what happens when we don't love ourselves is really, really apparent under this kind of condition. So I want everybody to be extremely conscious and extremely self-aware and be sort of well educated in how, and I mean that in the consciousness sense, in how you handle other people and versus yourself. So if you feel like you're being particularly difficult with others, it's meaning that on some level you're treating yourself that way because you come first. It's always coming. And if you're judgmental of others, or if you are aggravated with others, as often is the case with Aries, then what you want to look at is where you're aggravated with yourself, where you're judgmental of self. All of it points a finger back to you. And so the thing you want to be aware of is the transformation that you can achieve next week by being highly conscious and self-aware of how you treat yourself, how you love yourself, and how you sort of operate that and how you walk in the world that way. Who are you in the world when you're walking down the street? Are you conscious of these things, or is your head in 10 directions? I got to get here. I got to get to the bank. Then I got to, go here. I got to the supermarket, blah, blah, blah. What you want to do is be in that space and carrying it with you in your gut always. In the space of self-love, in the space of self-nurturance, and be highly consciously aware of when it's switched on and when you're tuned out. Because tuning out to that, especially with a square to Pluto, often trips us up. So that's something that is very important for each of us, all of us, to be aware of next weekend. And if you have a partner, don't start a fight. Don't let them trigger you to start a fight. And be loving and passionate and sexy and all those good things. And find the balance between self and other in that relationship, and between yourself and your ambition. Don't let your ambitions run you ragged where you don't love yourself. Remember, we're dealing with Capricorn energy. So be keenly aware of what you are, the vibe you're sending out there to, because that's the vibe you are, how you're treating yourself. So Friday is another big day because we have lots of stuff going on. So as I said, the sun is exalted in Aries, and it will be exalted right then and there on Friday the 9th. And what else happens that day? Well, Mars in its Gemini transit is squaring Neptune. This is an interesting and a little bit tricky aspect because Mars is in Gemini of two minds and wants to do lots of things and be flexible and have lots of options. And Neptune is the planet of the veil, the confusion, the place where we don't see clearly, the unseen versus the seen. And we may be trying to, Mars, be seen in some way, and then we just feel very, very distracted from that, or unseen in some way. And Mars going to Neptune in a square is very interesting. It's not the most friendliest of aspects because Mars is out in the world and assertive, and Neptune is behind the scenes and does not assert. And so if you be very careful. Be careful of your words because it's in Gemini, and be careful of what's going on behind your back because Mars is triggering a Neptune that is in Pisces and not seen. And there may be invisible energies at work, and you find out information, again, Gemini, that is like not, it's like, she's talking about me behind my back. I know that sounds very, very, teenage-like, but she's talking about me behind my back. This is the kind of energy. Mars to Neptune is a little backstabbing, and so I want everyone to be very conscious of how they're using their energy and how they're talking about others, and do it with heart and kindness rather than being gossip-oriented, because the gossip-orientedness comes from Gemini and then Neptune, and things kind of getting in this swirl of gossip and all. Be very careful with that energy. So, Mars and Neptune, it sneaks up on you. Can sneak up on you. Be careful. This is a betrayal energy. Mars Neptune, can be there and then not. It's a square. This is the first square Mars makes to Neptune since it conjunct last June. And for us here, one of our very beautiful cats disappeared under the Mars-Neptune. and I think someone stole her, because there were a few things, and it's like Mars Neptune is like a vanishing, and she was a very pretty cat, and they're out and about on the property, but it's easy that she slipped out, and someone I had the feeling someone took her. She was stolen, because that's like a betrayal, a stab in the back. But we'll never really know. Maybe we'll find out something on the square. I doubt it, because it's a tricky one. Because the moon was void that day, so I don't think we'll ever really know what happened to her. But it reminds me of that. It's that trickery or deception. There's some sort of deception there. So just be very aware of it. Then there is, the same day, there's Mercury on Chiron. Again, choose your words kindly. Be careful. This is all the ninth. The sun is powerful that day. The moon will go into Aries like late that night. And, we've got a couple of sticky things. Mars, Neptune is sticky, and Mercury to Chiron. So if words, this is a perfect setup for she's talking about me behind my back and I feel wounded. Okay? She said that about me? He said that about me? Oh my God. Now, this is where our heads have to be at on Friday. Be very careful. Do not lose your temper. And maybe it will come and go and nothing will happen. But maybe you have this arrangement in your chart somewhere. And if you do, it's possible that you feel triggered by it. So I want you to be very aware of how you use your words. Be kind, be thoughtful, be conscious, especially with yourself. Remember, some of this is happening in Aries. That would be the Mercury to Chiron in Aries. Be kind to the way you talk to yourself. Listen to how you speak to yourself. Okay? If you say, I do this all the time. I'm so fed up with myself. Not good words. Okay? Not. In the meantime, the moon is in Capricorn. It's going to meet Pluto later today. And then on Monday, tomorrow, it will enter Aquarius. And once it enters Aquarius, you know what that means, right? It's going to meet up with Jupiter and Saturn. That won't happen tomorrow, Monday. That will happen over the course of Tuesday and Wednesday. So what we're dealing with Monday the 5th is the end of the moon in Capricorn. By the time, you get up on the East Coast tomorrow, and we all get up, where I get up tomorrow morning, where I am, the moon will be in Aquarius. And it will stay in Aquarius for a couple of days, Tuesday and Wednesday. And Tuesday, it's when it reaches Saturn in the wee hours of Tuesday. And then it will reach Jupiter in the wee hours of Wednesday. So we've got the moon in Aquarius. Things will be eclectic. Things will be fun. Find good, interesting, creative things to be doing. The moon enters Pisces on Wednesday at 4:30 p.m. Eastern Time. It will be void from 6:05 a.m. Eastern Time. So that means it's void a good portion of Wednesday. If you have things happening on Wednesday, it may not be the best time to start something new. So let's try to be aware of what we're doing and try to not do anything brandy new from 6:05 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Thursday, the moon is in Pisces. Friday, the moon is in Pisces, goes void at 7:48 p.m. Eastern. And then we'll enter Aries really 2:11 a.m. Saturday, the wee hours. And that's when we start getting ready for that big new moon. New moon in Aries is fiery. So light a candle, make a wish, take initiation, and remember that it's squaring, it's going to be squaring Pluto. And that it's important to not allow yourself to get hot under the collar and just do something that's transformational for yourself. Initiate transformation in your life and love yourself. That's the most important thing you can do right now. And at any time, but particularly right now. Love yourself and be kind to yourself. And then you'll be kinder to others and they'll be kind to you. Okay, thank you for listening. Happy Easter. I'm Deb McBride. And if you'd like a session with me, please join me at thegoldenastrologer.com. Just click on book online and you can be taken to what you need. And I'm on Instagram at The Golden Astrologer. I'm on Twitter at Deb Astrology. And here I am on this podcast on Sundays. And if you would like further information, I'm teaching classes. if you'd like further information, drop me a line, info@thegoldenastrologer.com. Thank you so much. Best wishes for a beautiful week. Gratitude to all of you for listening. And hey, a shout out to the people in the far places of the earth who I find I'm listening to me. That would be Slovenia and Russia and the Ivory Coast. And I look at these things on my statistics. So thank you so much for listening way out there, and bring your friends on in. Thank you, and have a beautiful week.